Page 89 of the FBI's 127-page file on Marvin Gaye contains a single sentence. Subject gave his father, MG Sr., a firearm whose serial number is registered in the federal crime database. The rest of the sentence is redacted. But last year, new documents released under the Freedom of Information Act revealed what was hidden in that blacked-out section. The gun's serial number K487723 was seized in a cocaine operation in San Francisco in 1977. How did this gun end up for sale in Los Angeles 6 years later? And, more importantly, when Marvin Gaye learned about this gun's past, why did he insist on buying it, saying, "This is fate"? Today, we'll reveal the role of that cursed gun in 3 different murders, using police records and witness testimonies. Because some guns aren't just metal and gunpowder. Some carry a curse that can't be erased. And Marvin Gaye deliberately chose the gun that would bring his own end. If you're curious about the rest of this story and want to learn the darkest secrets of soul music, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. Because what I'm about to tell you will reveal the unknown side of one of music history's most tragic events. Summer of 1977. Federal agents were conducting an operation against a cocaine network they'd been tracking for months in San Francisco's foggy streets. When the door of the warehouse in Mission District was broken down, they found 50 kilos of cocaine, $2 million in cash, and 47 unregistered firearms inside. One of these guns was a Smith & Wesson .38 Special with serial number K487723. Federal agent Robert Martinez had an interesting note about this gun in his report. Bloodstains were detected on the gun's grip. Ballistic analysis determined this gun had been used in at least 2 different incidents recently. The gun was moved to the evidence locker and the case was closed. Or so it seemed. Because 18 months later, during a mysterious fire at the San Francisco Federal Evidence Depot, half of the guns seized from the cocaine operation disappeared. The official report listed the cause of the fire as electrical short circuit, but security guard Thomas Reed's statement never saw the light of day. Reed had seen 2 unknown men leaving the depot the night before the fire. One of them was carrying a metal box, and Reed could have sworn there were guns in that box. But here's what nobody could explain. How could a gun that was supposed to be locked in federal custody end up on the streets? And who had the power to orchestrate such a theft from a government facility? In the spring of 1979 in Compton, one of Los Angeles' most dangerous neighborhoods, a bloody war was raging for control of the street gangs. Jerome Washington, aka Ice, was one of the area's most ruthless cocaine dealers. On the night of March 23rd, he was found in his garage shot once in the head. The only evidence at the crime scene was an empty .38 caliber shell casing on the ground, and a note clutched tightly in Ice's hand that read simply, "The curse found you." When Detective Raymond Foster examined the ballistics report, he noticed an interesting detail. The markings on the bullet matched one of the guns seized in San Francisco in 1977 and later lost. Serial number K487723. When Foster contacted the San Francisco police, the answer he received was shocking. That gun had been officially destroyed. How could a gun that no longer existed on paper commit a murder in Los Angeles? When Foster dug deeper into his investigation, he learned that Ice had received a mysterious phone call 2 days before his death. The caller had only said, "The gun is coming for you. Fate is inevitable." Ice hadn't taken this threat seriously. But it was too late now. The question that would haunt Detective Foster for decades was this. Who knew about this gun's existence when it was supposedly destroyed? And why target a street dealer in Compton? On a cold November night in 1981, Angela Martinez was watching television in her Oakland living room when she was killed by a single bullet through the window. What was Angela's crime? She had witnessed the Ice Washington murder in Compton 2 years earlier. She was going to testify in court, but never made it to that day. When Oakland police arrived at the scene, they looked at the photo Angela was still clutching tightly in her lap. The photo showed Angela and her ex-boyfriend, Jerome "Ice" Washington. The bullet had entered right in the middle of Angela's forehead, just like how Ice had been shot. When the ballistics report came in, Detective Foster's suspicion was confirmed. Same gun. K4-723. But there was still no trace of the gun. Angela's neighbor, Maria Rodriguez, remembered a strange detail from the night of the murder. About an hour before the shooting, a black Cadillac had driven through the neighborhood. The car had no plates, but there was an interesting sticker on the rear window: Motown Records. Maria hadn't thought this detail was important at the time. After all, in 1981, Motown had just moved from Detroit to Los Angeles, and there were hundreds of cars connected to the Motown record label in the city. But wait, here's what made investigators' blood run cold. Why did a Motown record sticker appear at two different murder scenes 2 years apart? Was this just a coincidence, or was someone from the music industry connected to these killings? When Foster followed this lead, the name he encountered surprised him. There were only 3 people working at Motown at that time who drove black Cadillacs: Berry Gordy, Diana Ross, and the troubled star, Marvin Gaye. When Foster learned that Marvin was on a European tour at that time, he set this connection aside, but there was something he didn't know. Marvin's closest friend and drug dealer, Frankie Beverly, knew both Ice Washington and Angela Martinez. And Frankie also had a black Cadillac. He had put a Motown sticker on the rear window because it gave him an advantage during police checks. Nobody wanted to stop Motown stars. Years later, Frankie Beverly would confess in an interview, "I kept that gun. After Ice's death, the gun came to me. I don't know how it came. One morning it was at my door, in a brown box. After Angela died, I buried the gun. But someone found it and sold it to Marvin. Marvin knew the gun's history. He asked me. I confirmed it. He still wanted to buy it." December 1983 was a busy time in Los Angeles' underground world. The cocaine trade was at its peak, and gun trafficking was just as profitable. In South Central, Michael Thompson, nicknamed Big Mike, was a dealer who sold guns to both the rich and the gangs. On December 15th, an unexpected customer came to Big Mike's shop: Marvin Gaye. The Prince of Soul music looked terrible. His eyes were sunken, his hands were shaking. He was in the middle of a cocaine crisis. Mike recognized him and immediately took him to his private room. What Marvin wanted was clear. "I want a special gun. A gun with a history." Mike first showed normal guns, but Marvin shook his head. "No, the kind of gun I'm talking about. One with blood on it." Mike hesitated. He really did have such a gun in his safe. Frankie Beverly had brought it 3 months ago and sold it. K4-7723. Mike knew the gun's past and told Marvin about it. 2 bodies: Ice Washington and Angela Martinez. After listening, Marvin said something strange. The number 3 must be completed. Everything ends in cycles of 3. Mike didn't want to give the gun, but Marvin insisted and offered $5,000. It was 10 times the normal price. Mike accepted and put the gun in a brown box and gave it to Marvin. When Marvin opened the box and looked at the gun, he smiled. Finally, fate is inevitable. The question that haunted everyone who knew about this purchase: how did Marvin know about this gun's bloody history before even Frankie Beverly told him? Who had whispered the gun's legend into Marvin's ear months before he walked into that shop? After Marvin bought that gun, he didn't leave his house for 3 days. Neighbors had seen him talking to the gun in the garden. He had given the gun a name: Fate. According to his wife, Jan, Marvin would put the gun under his pillow at night and sleep with it. Jan once tried to hide the gun, but Marvin flew into such a rage that Jan got scared. "That gun talks to me," Marvin would say. 3 people. 2 done, 1 to go. Either me or my father. Jan hadn't taken these words seriously. She thought it was Marvin's cocaine paranoia. But on the night of December 23rd, Marvin gathered his family and made a strange speech. "This Christmas, I'm going to give my father a special gift. The gift he's been waiting for years. Power, control, and maybe redemption." When his mother Alberta asked what he meant, Marvin just smiled. "You'll see, Mother. It's all God's plan." When Christmas morning came, there was a tense atmosphere in the Gaye family's house in West Adams. Marvin Gaye Sr. was sitting in the living room as usual, watching religious programs on television. A Pentecostal preacher, Gaye Sr. had been in a cold war with his son for years. When Marvin came in, he was carrying a brown box. "Father, I have your Christmas gift," he said. When Gaye Sr. opened the box, the expression on his face changed. Inside lay a gleaming chrome-plated .38 caliber pistol. Alberta came running from the kitchen and screamed when she saw the gun. "No! Don't bring that gun into this house!" But Marvin was calm. "Mother, Father needs to protect himself. Los Angeles is a dangerous place." Gaye Sr. picked up the gun and examined it at length. Then he looked at his son. "Why are you giving this?" Marvin's answer chilled everyone's blood. "Because you deserve it. And because one day you'll use it." Gaye Sr. accepted the gun and took it to his bedroom. Alberta was crying. Neighbor Patricia Williams was watching that moment from her window and wrote in her diary, "When Marvin gave his father the gun, it was like he was digging his own grave." But think about this. If Gaye Sr. was supposedly just a peaceful preacher, why did he accept this gun so easily? What did he know that Alberta didn't? And why would he soon start practicing shooting in the middle of the night, as if preparing for something inevitable? Throughout January and February, the tension in the house steadily increased. Gaye Sr. now carried the gun everywhere. Sometimes he would get up in the middle of the night and practice shooting in the garden. Neighbors complained, but when police came, Gaye Sr. used his preacher identity. "I need to protect myself," he would say. Meanwhile, Marvin was becoming increasingly paranoid. His cocaine use had peaked, and he now rarely left the house. He constantly checked the windows, claiming the FBI was watching him. One night he told Jan, "That gun is calling me. We need to complete our fate." Jan tried to take Marvin to a psychiatrist, but Marvin refused. "Doctors won't understand," he said. "This isn't a medical condition. This is fate." On March 15th, Marvin made a strange confession to his mother. "Mother, there's a reason I gave that gun to Father. That gun is cursed. It killed 2 people. It will kill a 3rd. Either he kills me or I kill him." Alberta tried to calm her son, but Marvin continued, "No, Mother, you can't understand. That gun has a soul, and that soul wants blood." On March 28th, Marvin's former drug dealer, Frankie Beverly, came to visit him. Frankie was shocked when he saw Marvin. Marvin had lost 20 kilos and was on the verge of madness. The two went to the garage to talk privately. Years later, Frankie would describe this conversation. "Marvin asked me about the gun, asked why I sold it to him. I said I didn't sell it. I gave it to Big Mike. Marvin laughed and said, 'Doesn't matter, the gun found me.' Then he asked me who killed Ice and Angela. I said I didn't know. Marvin didn't believe me. 'You killed them, didn't you?' he said. I said no. Marvin looked at me for a long time, then said, 'Then the gun killed on its own, and it will kill again.' I wanted to leave, but Marvin grabbed my arm. 'Frankie, if something happens to me, know that this was fate.' 'That gun came to finish its job,' he said. Frankie left Los Angeles the next day and never came back. Here's a detail that was never in any police report. Frankie Beverly knew something else. The night before Ice was killed, Frankie had received the same gun in a package with no return address. And the night before Angela died, The gun had disappeared from where he'd hidden it, only to reappear the morning after her death. How was this possible? March 31st, 1984, Saturday. The weather in Los Angeles was hot and humid. There had been tension in the Gaye family house since morning. Marvin was upstairs in his room. His father, Gaye Sr., was downstairs in the living room. Alberta was preparing food in the kitchen. Around 11:30, Marvin came downstairs and started arguing with his father. The topic wasn't different from usual: money, respect, pride. But this time the argument quickly escalated. Marvin told his father, "You were never a real man." Gaye Sr. stood up and approached his son. Alberta came running from the kitchen and tried to intervene. Marvin pushed his father and knocked him down. Gaye Sr. got up from the floor and went to the bedroom. Alberta was trying to calm Marvin. A few minutes later, Gaye Sr. returned. In his hand was the gun Marvin had given him for Christmas, K487723. Alberta screamed, "No! Put the gun down!" But Gaye Sr. was determined. He pointed the gun at his son. Marvin didn't move. On the contrary, he smiled and spread his arms wide. "Come on, father. Do it. Live the moment you've been waiting for." Gaye Sr.'s hand was shaking. Marvin took another step closer. "Shoot me. The damn gun wants blood." "Give it!" The first bullet entered the right side of Marvin's chest. Marvin staggered but didn't fall. Gaye Sr. fired a second time. This time he hit the left shoulder. Marvin fell to his knees. He looked at his father and said his last words, "Thank you." Gaye Sr. was confused. He was just realizing what he had done. Alberta ran to her son. Marvin was still breathing, but the blood loss was severe. Neighbors had heard the gunshots and called the police. When the ambulance arrived, Marvin was still alive. According to paramedic Frank Peterson, who was in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, Marvin kept mumbling something. 3. Complete. The gun finished its job. At 1:01 p.m. at California Hospital, Marvin Gaye lost his life, just one day before his 45th birthday. Gaye Sr. was arrested, and the gun was confiscated. K487723 had now committed its third murder. But the story doesn't end here, because that gun's curse was still continuing. Details that emerged during the trial shocked everyone. In his statement, Gaye Sr. said, "The gun wasn't under my control. It was like someone else was pulling the trigger. Marvin was right. That gun was cursed." When psychiatrist Dr. Ronald Markman examined Gaye Sr., he made an interesting diagnosis. The patient has delusional thoughts about the gun controlling him. However, it's unclear when these delusions began. While the trial continued, the prosecution presented interesting evidence. Records seized from Big Mike's shop contained the sales details of gun K487723. But what was really shocking was the note found next to the gun. The note was written in an unrecognized handwriting and contained only these sentences: "This gun will take 3 victims. The first 2 are the price. The third is fate. For MG." The note was dated 1977. It had been written 6 years before Marvin Gaye even bought the gun. Who wrote it? FBI graphology experts examined the note but couldn't reach a conclusion. The handwriting didn't match any record in the database. Even more mysterious was another photo found in the box where the note was. The photo showed a young Marvin Gaye, only in his 20s, holding a gun and smiling. On the back was a date, 1960. Marvin was just a young man singing in the church choir then. He wouldn't meet Motown for years. So how could this photo be found next to a gun seized in 1977? Here's where the story takes an even darker turn. If that photo of young Marvin was really from 1960, 17 years before the gun was seized, how could someone predict this tragic connection? Was this fate, or was someone orchestrating events across decades? Gaye Sr.'s lawyer claimed his client was innocent, that the gun was cursed, and that Gaye Sr. had acted outside his will. The prosecution rejected this defense. But the jury was undecided. In the end, Gaye Sr. was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 6 years in prison. The sentence was suspended. Gaye Sr. didn't go to prison, but guilt was eating him from the inside. When he died in 1998, his will had an interesting request. Gun number K487723 must be found and destroyed. But the gun had already disappeared. It should have been in the police evidence locker, but it wasn't there. In a 1990 inventory, it was discovered the gun wasn't in its place. Nobody knew when it had disappeared, or nobody was saying. The FBI found something that made their blood run cold during a 1995 cold case review. The handwriting on that 1977 note matched another document, a letter found in Marvin Gaye's childhood home dated 1959, when Marvin was just 20. How is that possible? Who could write identical notes 18 years apart? In 2010, during a construction excavation in Los Angeles, a metal box was found. Inside was a gun, K487723. The workers called the police. The gun was taken to the laboratory for examination, but it disappeared before reaching the lab. It had been lost during transfer. Officer John Davies couldn't explain the incident. The gun was in the box. When we arrived at the lab, the box was empty. I don't know how it happened. In 2019, an auction in Las Vegas featured an interesting lot among the items for sale. Historic gun allegedly belonging to Marvin Gaye. The seller was keeping their identity secret. The FBI seized the auction and examined the gun. The serial number had been scratched off, but was revealed through chemical analysis. K487723. The gun was really destroyed this time, or so they said, because in 2022, in a murder committed in Detroit, the ballistic analysis of the bullet gave an interesting result. The markings matched K487723. But this was impossible. The gun had been destroyed 3 years ago. The Detroit Police Department investigated the matter, and a shocking truth emerged. There had been tampering in the records of the officer who performed the destruction. Officer Michael Thompson was Big Mike's son. Yes, the son of Big Mike who sold the gun to Marvin Gaye in 1983. Michael Thompson's confession raised the ultimate question. Before my father died, he told me to find and hide that gun. That gun, he said, is different from some guns. It's alive. I thought my father was delirious. But when I took the gun to destroy it, when I held it in my hand, there was a strange feeling. It was like the gun was talking to me. I couldn't destroy it. I hid it. Then it disappeared. I swear I didn't sell it. The gun left on its own. If the gun really left on its own as he claimed, where did it go? And more terrifyingly, who is it looking for next? Today, in 2024, the whereabouts of gun K487723 is unknown. According to official records, it was destroyed. But according to street legends, the gun is still somewhere, waiting for its fourth victim. According to stories whispered in the Los Angeles underground, those who hold the gun have strange dreams. In the dream are 3 men: Ice Washington, Angela Martinez, and Marvin Gaye. All 3 are smiling and saying the same thing. One more person. According to the FBI's unofficial records, traces of K487723 have been detected in 7 different crimes in the last 5 years. But each time the gun couldn't be found, only bullet traces. But here's what will keep you up at night. Those 7 crimes where K487223's ballistic signature appeared. They all had one thing in common. All 7 victims were connected to the music industry. 3 were producers, 2 were singers, 1 was a sound engineer, and 1 was a music journalist who had been investigating Marvin Gaye's death. Is the gun choosing its victims, or is someone using it to send a message? Federal agent Sarah Coleman said in an interview before retiring, "In my 40-year career, I've seen many strange cases, but K487723 is different. That gun acts as if it has its own will. It can't be explained scientifically, but the evidence is there. That gun is still somewhere, and I'm afraid its job isn't finished. Marvin Gaye's daughter Nona shared an interesting detail when talking about her father's death in an interview in 2023. "My father called me a week before he died. 'Nona,' he said, 'if something happens to me, know that I chose my own fate. That gun didn't come for me. I called it.' I didn't understand what he meant then. I understand now. My father wrote his own ending. He deliberately chose that gun because he was tired of suffering. The gun offered him a way out. Maybe it wasn't a curse, but redemption." Nona's words bring a different perspective to this whole story. Maybe Marvin Gaye wasn't the victim of that cursed gun, but the author of his fate. Maybe K487723 was just a tool. The real curse was the toxic relationship within the Gaye family. The 45-year war between father and son could only end this way. One gun, 3 victims, one fate. And this fate was sealed with Marvin Gaye's Christmas gift. On the 40th anniversary of soul music's prince Marvin Gaye's tragic death, there are still unanswered questions. Was that gun really cursed? Or was it a product of Marvin's cocaine paranoia? Did the same gun really kill Ice Washington and Angela Martinez? And most importantly, where is K487723 today? The answers to these questions may never be found, but one truth remains unchanged. Marvin Gaye chose his own end. By giving that gun to his father, he sealed his fate. And on April 1st, 1984, one day before his 45th birthday, that fate was fulfilled. But the darkest part of the story hasn't been told yet. In the autopsy performed after Marvin's death, Dr. Thomas Noguchi made an interesting discovery. In Marvin's pocket was a folded piece of paper. The paper was soaked with blood, but the writing was still readable. It was a letter written in Marvin's handwriting, dated March 31st, 1984, just hours before his death. The letter began, "To whoever reads this, know that I chose my own end. K723 is my fate. This gun came to me in my dreams. I saw Ice. I saw Angela. They were both smiling. 'It's your turn, Marvin,' they said. I smiled too. Because I'm tired now. Tired of this pain, this fight, this life. My father won't be my killer but my savior. When he pulls that trigger, he'll set me free." The continuation of the letter was even more striking. "Tell Diana I always loved her, but we couldn't live a love in Barry's shadow. Tammy is waiting for me in heaven. I dream every night about that last concert when I held her in my arms. Blood was flowing from her brain, but she was still smiling. 'Marvin,' she said, 'you'll come too.' And I came. K487723 is my ticket. Father is just the conductor." Dr. Noguchi delivered this letter to the police, but for some reason it wasn't used in court. Gaye Sr.'s lawyer hadn't even heard of the letter's existence. Years later, after Noguchi retired, he mentioned this letter in his book. That letter, he said, was proof that Marvin Gaye wanted to commit suicide, but instead of doing it himself, he used his father. This was a kind of indirect suicide, assisted suicide. Noguchi's theory created great controversy in the medical world. Could a person plan their own death in such detail? And moreover, could they tie their fate to a gun? A new piece of evidence that emerged in 2020 deepened the story even further. After the death of Marvin's former manager Stephen Hill, interesting documents were found in a safe at his house. One of them was a will Marvin wrote in November 1983. Unlike normal wills, this document didn't talk about his assets, but his soul. I, Marvin Penske Jr., being of sound mind and will, surrender my soul to gun number K487723. This gun is my fate. When it finds me, I will surrender to it. My father, Marvin Gaye Sr., is just a tool. Don't blame him. He will fulfill my wish. This document wasn't notarized, but Marvin's signature was verified by experts. There was another document in Stephen Hill's safe. A list of guns stolen from the San Francisco Federal Depot, dated 1977. Next to the list was a handwritten note, K487723, reserved for Marvin Gaye. It was unclear who wrote the note, but the date was remarkable. In 1977, Marvin Gaye wasn't using cocaine yet. His marriage was fine, and his career was at its peak. Why would someone reserve a gun for Marvin at that date? Hill's secretary, Barbara Johnson, said her boss kept these documents for years and never showed them to anyone. Mr. Hill blamed himself for Marvin's death, Barbara said. Once he told me I arranged that gun at Marvin's request, but I couldn't have predicted the outcome. The FBI took these documents for examination after Hill's death, but the official report stated the documents were insufficient evidence, and the case was closed. However, after FBI agent Sarah Coleman retired, she told a different story. We examined those documents, and we found a terrible truth. The story of K487723 doesn't begin in 1977. It goes back to the 1960s. When Marvin Gaye was only in his 20s, he had stolen a pistol from a gun shop in Detroit. That pistol's serial number? K487723. But isn't it impossible? That gun was seized in San Francisco in 1977. How can the same gun be in two different times and places? Coleman's theory was this. Either there were two different K487723s, or this number was being specially given to certain people. By whom and why? Nobody knows. Leon Ware took one secret to his grave that he never revealed in that final interview. He knew who originally owned K487723 in 1960. The owner's identity would have shocked the music world. It was someone very close to Marvin, someone who had been there from the beginning. But who was it? The answer may lie in the Motown archives, locked away forever. Marvin Gaye's closest friend and music partner, legendary producer Leon Ware, made a shocking confession in his last interview shortly before his death in 2017. Months before Marvin bought that gun, he had told me something. Leon, he had said, if you could choose your fate, how would you want to die? I had laughed, thinking it was a silly question. But Marvin was serious. I, he said, would want to die by my father's hand, because only then would we be equal. He gave me life. Let him take my life too. I had thought this was cocaine paranoia at the time, but now I understand. Marvin had planned everything. That gun wasn't a coincidence. His father wasn't a coincidence. Everything was Marvin's script. Leon Ware's words created a bombshell effect in the music world. Even Motown boss Berry Gordy broke his silence after this confession. In an interview in 2018, Gordy said, Marvin was a complex man, but he wasn't crazy. If what Leon says is true, and I trust Leon, then Marvin probably orchestrated the most tragic and most planned death in music history. He created a work of art not just with his songs, but with his death. Terrible, but equally impressive. And perhaps the most mysterious part of this whole story is the song Marvin Gaye recorded in the studio the day before he died that was never released. The song's name was K487723. Yes, the gun's serial number. This recording, kept in the Motown archives, has only been heard by 3 people, Berry Gordy, Stevie Wonder, and Diana Ross. All 3 refused to talk about the song. But a sound technician who worked at Motown shared a few lines from the song's lyrics on condition of anonymity. Metal and gunpowder, blood and tears, K487723, my destiny, my last breath in my father's hands. 3 victims, 1 gun, eternal peace. The unreleased song, K487723, supposedly contains a hidden message when played backwards. The 3 people who heard it, Berry, Stevie, and Diana, all refused to discuss what they heard. What could be so disturbing that these legends won't even hint at it? Some say it's a confession, others claim it's a prophecy. But until that recording sees the light of day, we'll never know. Will this song ever be released? Motown says never to this question. But in the music world, there are rumors that this recording is being sold under the table for millions of dollars. And perhaps the most chilling question of all, if the pattern holds true, if this gun really does take victims in cycles of 3, then we're due for another trilogy of deaths. The first would happen in 2024. Has it already begun? Are those 7 music industry deaths just the beginning of a new cycle? Today, 40 years have passed since Marvin Gaye's death. K487723 is still missing. Gaye Sr. died in 1998 and took his secret to the grave. But on the streets of Los Angeles, in the back alleys of Detroit, there are still whispers. Some say the gun's curse continues. In 2023, in a murder committed in Los Angeles, the ballistic analysis of the bullet again pointed to K487723. But this time the police report closed the case saying technical error. Real or fiction? Nobody knows. But one thing is certain. Marvin Gaye's story, that gun story, still isn't over. Maybe it never will be. Because some stories, some curses, continue for generations. And K487723, as one of music history's greatest mysteries, continues to live in memory somewhere in the darkness, perhaps waiting for its 4th victim. Or maybe, as Marvin said, everything ends in 3s and the gun will remain lost forever. Only time will tell. But for now, Marvin Gaye's tragic story and the mystery of that cursed gun continue to live as an indelible mark in America's cultural memory.